My name is Odessa Marine, and I turned 70 last spring. I still rise before dawn out of habit, still fold my blouses with crisp corners, and still believe that decency like cotton shows its quality when pressed by heat. I have lived through grief loneliness and rusted washing machines, but nothing prepared me for the sound of that cashier's voice. The card was reported stolen by its owner. The words seemed to hover above the polished counter, quiet, but sharp enough to slice through the soft boutique music. I stood a few steps behind my son Ciro, who had just been laughing with the young salesgirl as she wrapped up the handbags. His laughter stopped mid-breath. His fingers stiffened around the card. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. I saw him turn, confusion flashing into something else, fear, then denial. "There must be a mistake," he said. His voice, once so sure, trembled on the edges. The cashier's eyes flicked toward me. She didn't know who I was, not yet. All she knew was that an older woman in a gray blouse had appeared at the entrance, watching quietly. She looked between us as if trying to decide who the card truly belonged to. Ciro tried again. "Run it one more time." Her hand hesitated above the terminal. "I can't, sir. The system says the card was flagged this morning by the owner herself." He blinked at the word herself. The color drained from his face like dye pulled from cloth. I could almost hear his heart falling into the silence between us. People nearby began to stare. One whispered, "That's her son." Another tried to look away. I wanted to stop the scene, to take him by the arm and tell him to go home before the shame reached his bones, but I didn't. My hands stayed at my sides. The manager came forward. "Ma'am, are you—" "Yes," I said quietly. "I am the owner of that card." Ciro turned fully toward me, then disbelief clouding his features. His voice cracked. "Mom, you reported me." I wished I could tell him it was a misunderstanding, that this was all an accident. But the truth had no softness left. It was a hard, necessary thing. "I had to," I said. "You left me no choice." For a long moment, the store felt airless. Even the faint perfume from the display bottles seemed to retreat. Ciro looked down at the floor, as if searching for some version of himself that hadn't broken yet. When the security guard asked for identification, I handed over mine with steady fingers. The same fingers that had once buttoned his school shirts, tied his shoes, and counted change for his first baseball glove. People ask why a mother would report her own son. The truth is, it didn't start with theft. It started with love. And love, I've learned, can hide the sharpest blade beneath its gentle hand. That moment at the boutique wasn't the beginning. It was the end of something that had been unraveling for months. I built my life with calloused hands and lint-stained aprons. Long before the boutiques and the quiet house, there was heat soap and the rhythm of spinning drums. Hector and I started with a single second-hand washer in a narrow storefront off South Flores Street. He fixed pipes while I scrubbed stains that seemed bigger than the shirts they lived on. We worked 12-hour days breathing steam and detergent until our fingers cracked. Every peso we saved, because back then, we still counted in pesos, before opening our first American account, went back into the business. Someday, Mija Hector would say, wiping sweat from his neck, "We'll own the building, not just rent the walls." We did. Then we owned 2, then 5. Marine Cleaners became a name people trusted. Hector handled the machines. I handled people. My customers brought gossip, grief, even wedding dresses too delicate for their own hands. They said Odessa never loses a garment, never loses her temper. That was true for almost 40 years. When Hector died 3 years ago, heart gave out while repairing a dryer belt. The laundromats ran themselves, but I didn't. The silence afterward had weight. The machines still hummed, but the music was gone. I tried to fill the empty hours by polishing coins, balancing books, and tending the rose bush he planted near our porch. But routine has a cruel way of turning purpose into habit. I told people I was fine because I believed it most days. I had employees who respected me, neighbors who waved, and a son who called twice a year. That felt like enough. Then one morning, my manager Rosa found me sitting behind the counter of the main shop before dawn. "Señora, you never rest," she said. "You have a home now. Enjoy it." I smiled. "I do enjoy it, Rosa. I enjoy knowing this place still runs like clockwork." She gave me that look only someone younger but wiser can give, half respect, half pity. A clock can run, Señora, and still be alone on the wall. That sentence followed me home that night. The house Hector and I restored in King William, the wooden banisters, the wide porch sounded larger than ever. Even the refrigerator seemed to sigh when it turned on. I poured 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then watched one grow cold. When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. It was a strange hour for anyone to call. I expected a wrong number, maybe a telemarketer. "Mom?" The voice was older than I remembered, rougher too. "Ciro." My chest tightened around the name. "Yeah, it's me. I'm back in the States. Thought I'd surprise you." I sat down, gripping the edge of the counter. "Where are you calling from?" "Dallas. We landed last night. Clara's with me." Clara. I'd seen her face only in filtered photos and holiday messages. "You both came back." "For a while," he said. "Things didn't work out there. Spain's expensive, and honestly, Mom, we need a reset." I didn't hear the fatigue in his tone, then only the word reset, which sounded like a gift. My son was coming home. Then, "Come here," I said, already imagining fresh sheets, fresh starts. "Come home, Ciro." He hesitated. "Are you sure? We don't want to be a burden?" "You could never be a burden," I said. "This house has room. I've been keeping it ready." He laughed softly. "Still running those laundries like an army, huh?" "Someone has to keep things clean," I said. I didn't know then that some stains take more than soap and heat to reveal. The line went quiet for a beat. "We'll drive down tomorrow," he said. When I hung up, the house didn't feel so large anymore. For the first time in years, I set 2 places at the table and smiled at the thought of company filling the rooms again. But as the night settled in, the silence changed its shape. It wasn't absence anymore, but waiting. The next morning, the air smelled of lemon cleaner and nerves. I had barely slept, replaying Ciro's voice again and again. 15 years had passed since he left for Spain, chasing what he called a life with sunlight and art. I had sent money when I could, plane tickets, tuition, 1 emergency rent payment he promised to repay. He never did. But I told myself that was love's job to forget the ledger. Now he was coming home. I spent the entire morning opening windows, shaking out curtains, polishing doorknobs that hadn't needed it in years. Every task steadied my hands. When Rosa called from the laundromat to ask about payroll, I told her, "Handle it this week, mija. My son's coming home." By the afternoon, I was cooking enough food for 10 people, pork roast rice with pigeon peas, the bread pudding Hector used to love. The house filled with smells that made time rewind. They arrived just after sunset. The cab's headlights stretched across the porch as I opened the door. Ciro stepped out first. He looked leaner than I remembered, his once thick hair, trimmed close, his clothes too formal for Texas heat. Behind him, a woman climbed out, tall and composed, wearing beige from head to toe. "Mom," he said, smiling, "you look exactly the same." I laughed, though my throat tightened. That's either a compliment or a lie. He hugged me stiffly at first, then tighter, like he remembered what it meant. The woman waited by the suitcase, eyes skimming the porch columns. "This is Clara," he said. "My wife." Her handshake was cool, her perfume faint and expensive. "It's lovely here," she said, though her tone sounded more like observation than warmth. "Come in," I said. "You must be tired." Inside, the dining table gleamed. I had set 3 places, polished the silver folded napkins, the way my mother taught me. Ciro whistled. You didn't have to go all out. I wanted to, I said. You're home. Clara smiled politely. It feels like a museum. Everything's spotless. I took it as praise until she added, You must have a lot of free time. Ciro laughed, maybe to soften it. You should see her laundries, Clara. My mom still runs 5 locations like a general. 5, she said, eyebrows lifting. That's impressive. Enough to stay busy, I replied. She looked around again, her eyes pausing on the family photos along the hallway. It must have been quiet all these years. Quiet can be peaceful, I said. Dinner passed with polite conversation and too much careful silence. Clara talked about Madrid, about restaurants, art galleries, and people with real taste. Ciro chimed in, but never mentioned work. Each time I asked, he deflected with charm. So what are your plans here? I asked finally. Will you stay long? He sipped his wine. A few months, maybe more. We need to figure things out first. Things. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We left in a hurry. My last job, well, it didn't end well. Clara set down her fork, her voice smooth. Spain was too competitive. Ciro deserves better opportunities. I nodded, though unease crept beneath the tablecloth. You'll find your place. Texas is good soil for second chances. After dinner, I carried plates to the sink. They stood in the doorway, whispering. When I turned, they stopped. Ciro kissed my cheek. Thanks, Mom. It feels good to be back. I smiled and meant it. The sound of his voice filled corners I'd forgotten existed. Still, as I turned off the kitchen light, I caught Clara's reflection in the window, her eyes on the hallway where I kept my purse, my keys, and the small wooden box that held my spare cards. That night I told myself I was imagining it. Hope makes fools of even the wisest mothers. The morning after their arrival, sunlight spilled through the kitchen window like it always had, but everything else felt different. The chairs seemed smaller, the air too careful, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Ciro sat at the table scrolling through his phone, while Clara arranged the sugar packets in even lines. She moved with the precision of someone used to being watched. Do you always keep the salt and sugar in glass jars? She asked without looking up. I do, I said. They've been there since Hector built the shelf. Her smile was polite but distant. Cute. Very vintage. Ciro laughed softly. Mom's kept everything the same since the 90s. I like the 90s, I replied. Things lasted longer back then. He didn't respond, just tapped his phone again. I poured him coffee and noticed his watch new, sleek, the kind that costs more than 1 month's payroll at my laundromats. Nice watch, I said. He glanced up almost startled. Oh, a gift from a friend. Back in Madrid. Clara brushed imaginary crumbs from the counter. We sold a few things before leaving. It's been an adjustment. Her tone held no shame, just a faint suggestion that she had traded down to be here. I plated eggs and toast the way Ciro used to like them. Still runny? I asked. He smiled. You remember. Some things are worth remembering. For a moment, warmth passed between us. Then Clara broke it. You must have staff for all your laundries, right? 5, he said. Yes, I said. Good women. Most have been with me for decades. That's impressive, she said. Though maybe it's time to let younger people handle things, modernize a bit. Ciro nodded. She's right, Mom. You've worked long enough. Maybe it's time we look at your accounts, see how to simplify. You're still all paper and checkbooks. I set down my cup. I've managed just fine. I know, he said quickly. But the world's different now. Online banking investments, credit systems. Clara's good with that. Clara's voice softened persuasive. We could help. Just to make sure nothing slips through. Something in me tightened. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. If anything slips through, I'll wash it out. Old habit. Ciro laughed, missing the edge in my tone. You're still stubborn. And you're still talking with your mouth full, I said lightly. He grinned, but she didn't. She glanced around the kitchen again, her gaze stopping on the photo wall. Hector with grease on his hands, me with curlers in my hair, Ciro as a boy holding a wrench too big for him. Your husband fixed machines, right? She asked. Yes, I said, until the day his heart gave out. Her expression flickered, almost sympathy, almost pity. He must have been very proud of what you built. He was, I said quietly. We both were. The coffee pot hissed between us. Ciro reached for my hand briefly. We're here now, Mom. We'll take care of things. His words sounded kind, but they pressed against me like a promise I hadn't made. Outside, the wind rattled the porch chimes Hector hung decades ago. Inside, Clara's voice filled the kitchen, smooth, certain, and foreign in a house that had always belonged to me. It started with a chair. On the third morning after they arrived, I came downstairs and found my favorite reading chair facing the wrong direction, angled toward the window instead of the hearth. Clara was on her knees folding the afghan that usually hung across it. Oh, I hope you don't mind, she said. The room felt a bit crowded. I'm trying to give it breathing space. I watched her move with the confidence of someone already certain she'd improved things. It's all right, I said, forcing a smile. I suppose the room could use a little air. Exactly. She flashed a satisfied smile. Minimalism calms the mind. You'll see, it'll feel lighter. By the end of the day, 3 picture frames were missing from the mantel. The rug was rolled halfway under the couch, and the lamp Hector bought me for our 30th anniversary had been replaced with a smaller one Clara brought from their suitcase. Ciro noticed none of it. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, while I tried to ignore the hollow feeling spreading through the room. Mom, he said, Clara's got a great eye for design. You should let her help you freshen up the house. I set my tea down. It's fine as it is, he chuckled. You've had it this way for 20 years? It's good to evolve a little. She's not changing things, Clara said gently, though her hands were already adjusting the curtain ties. Just reorganizing, there's a difference. Her voice was pleasant, but it carried the quiet authority of someone claiming space. The next morning, the difference spread. My spice jars had been relabeled, the towels in the hall closet color-coded, and the mail stacked neatly, but my bank statement envelope was open. Did you look at this? I asked Ciro after breakfast. He glanced up from his laptop. At what? My statement. It was sealed yesterday. Oh, that must have been Clara, he said. She thought it was junk mail. Don't worry, Mom, you have plenty. He said it casually, almost affectionately, as if the word plenty excused intrusion. I worked 40 years for that plenty, I said. He smiled. And I'm proud of you for it. Really, but you don't have to keep worrying about every penny. You've done enough. I wanted to believe that was gratitude. I wanted to believe the open envelope meant nothing. After lunch, I went to put away the grocery receipts and found my credit card tucked inside the wrong drawer under the dish towels instead of in my wallet. For a second, my stomach dropped. Then I reminded myself that Clara had cleaned the kitchen that morning. She must have moved it without realizing, I thought. She means well. That night when she poured me tea, she smiled as if she'd read my thoughts. I hope you like chamomile, Mama Odessa. It helps you sleep better. I thanked her, though the word mama from her lips felt oddly heavy, half affection, half possession. The next morning, the house gleamed. Every corner smelled of polish and citrus. And yet, when I walked through it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something invisible had shifted. Something too small to name but too large to ignore. It was a Tuesday when the envelope arrived, cream paper, my name printed neatly on the front. My monthly statement. I opened it at the kitchen table while Clara hummed upstairs, unpacking something in what used to be Ciro's room. At first I skimmed. I always did. Electricity, groceries, insurance, nothing unusual. Then I saw it. Maison de Loria, 8,400 pesos. Haven Spa, 3,900 pesos. La Boutique, 12,600 pesos. My fingers tightened around the pages. Those weren't my errands. Those weren't my worlds. Ciro came in, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, I'll call back," he said quickly when he saw my face. "Everything okay? Did you or Clara use my card?" He frowned. "Your card? Why would we—" I turned the paper toward him. "These are not my charges. Maison de Loria Haven Spa. Those are your wife's kind of places, not mine." He stared at the paper for a long moment, then laughed too easily. "Mom, it's probably a mix-up. Maybe they double-charged someone or put the wrong number. 3 stores in 1 week." He scratched his chin. "Clara might have gone to get you something. Remember the perfume she mentioned? She said she wanted to surprise you." I looked at the list again. Perfume didn't cost 24,000 pesos, but his voice was gentle, the same tone he used as a boy when he wanted to avoid punishment. "Maybe I'm mistaken," I said quietly. "I'll check with the bank." He smiled, relieved. "Don't stress yourself, Mom. It's probably nothing." Clara appeared in the doorway, then holding a folded bedsheet. "What's nothing?" "Some mix-up on the statement," Ciro said. "You might have used the wrong card when you bought the gift." Her eyes flickered for a second. "Gift. The perfume," he said. "Oh, right. Yes." She recovered instantly. "The clerk must have used your number. I'll call tomorrow and fix it." She set the sheet down and placed her hand lightly over mine. "You shouldn't worry, Mama Odessa. Technology makes mistakes all the time." Her touch was warm. Too warm. I nodded and forced a smile. "I know. I just don't like loose ends." "You're too strict with yourself," she said sweetly. "You've earned rest." When she left the room, Ciro exhaled. "See, solved." I tried to smile, but something inside me stayed tense. That night I logged into my account online for the first time in months. The numbers glowed cold against the dark screen. The balance was lower than I remembered by more than 30,000 pesos. My throat went dry. I stared at the transactions again. They weren't errors. They were deliberate, precise, dated 2 days apart. I could have called Ciro back into the room. I could have printed the evidence and placed it in front of him, demanded honesty. Instead, I closed the laptop. When I passed their room on my way to bed, I heard them talking softly. Clara's voice. "She'll never notice. Just be patient." Then Ciro's lower tone. "She's not stupid. Then don't make her suspicious." I froze by the door, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. For a moment, I wanted to knock to walk in and ask what they were hiding. But then Ciro laughed softly easily, like the little boy who used to bring me dandelions in his pockets, and that sound disarmed me. I walked back to my room and sat on the edge of my bed, the statement still folded in my hand. Before turning off the light, I whispered, "It's just a misunderstanding." But the numbers on the page didn't believe me. The first time Clara called me forgetful, she did it with a smile. "Don't worry, Mama Odessa," she said, handing me my keys. "You left these in the fridge again." I stared at her palm. The metal felt cold, damp. "In the fridge." She laughed softly, a delicate sound that somehow stung. "You must have been distracted. It happens at your age." Ciro looked up from his tablet. "Mom, maybe you've been overworking. Running those laundries for decades can wear you down." "I'm fine," I said. Maybe I put them down while I was getting milk." "Exactly," Clara said. "No big deal." But the next morning my keys were missing again. And when I found them this time behind the toaster, I could almost hear her voice before she said it. "I told you," she murmured. "You're too hard on yourself. Age isn't weakness, Mama, but you should slow down." She said it like care, but her tone landed like a mark on a scorecard. Later that week, she mentioned the stove. I smelled gas earlier, she said lightly, as we cleared the dishes. You must have forgotten to turn it off. I didn't cook today, I replied. She blinked. No. Then maybe last night. I ate with Rosa at the shop. I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Her smile never changed. You see, that's why I worry. You forget things. Ciro came in then, holding his phone. What's going on? Nothing, Clara said before I could speak. Just the stove. Your mom nearly left it on. I did not. He frowned gently, as if reasoning with a child. Mom, it's okay. You've got a lot on your mind. Maybe you just missed it. I looked at him at the son I raised to think before speaking, and saw a stranger wearing concern like a mask. That night I took out a small notebook I kept in the drawer by my bed. The cover was worn, the pages lined. I wrote the date, the time, and a simple entry. Gaslight. Keys. Stove. The next morning I wrote again, breakfast at 8. Stove off. Keys in purse. It wasn't just about memory anymore, it was about proof. 2 days later, Clara brought up the bank statement again. I was thinking maybe it's time Ciro helps you organize things, she said. You get confused with the online accounts. I'm not confused. She looked at me over her coffee cup. You said the password was lost. Remember, I changed it. Oh, right. She smiled. Then you must have told me wrong earlier. I didn't tell you anything. Her expression softened. Mama, you don't have to get defensive, Ciro sighed. She's just trying to help Mom. Why are you so tense lately? I swallowed hard. I'm not tense. I'm tired. Then let us handle some of it, he said. We can take care of you now. Take care. The phrase rolled between them like a quiet decision I wasn't invited to join. That evening I went through the house and checked every knob, every switch, every lock. I wrote each one down in my notebook. When I came back to the kitchen, Clara was standing by the counter drying a glass. You should rest, she said, voice warm as honey. You've been pacing like someone afraid of her own house. I smiled faintly, just making sure everything's in order. She tilted her head. Of course. I'll keep an eye out too, just in case. I walked upstairs with my notebook hidden beneath my sweater. When I closed my bedroom door, I could still hear her humming soft, even and perfectly in tune with the creaking of the house that no longer felt entirely mine. It was close to 2 a.m. when I woke to the sound of voices. The air felt heavy, the kind of stillness that only breaks when someone is lying. At first I thought I'd dreamt it. Then I heard Clara soft, deliberate, like someone rehearsing a plan she'd practiced in her head. She forgets small things already, she whispered. The keys, the stove, her mail. If we claim early cognitive decline, the bank will listen. We can get her to sign the power of attorney, and after that, everything moves easily. My heart went cold before my feet even touched the floor. I opened my door just enough to see the faint glow from the kitchen. Their voices echoed down the hallway, thin and cruel, through the quiet. Ciro's voice came next, lower, uncertain. You think they'd really believe it? They believed it about my aunt, Clara said. All we need is a doctor's note. Maybe we say she's been paranoid, accusing us of things. He didn't answer. I waited for the sound of resistance. Some protest, but silence stretched long enough to make it clear he wasn't objecting. Finally, he said, she'll hate me if she finds out. She won't, Clara replied. By the time it's done, she won't even understand what she's signing. My body trembled so hard I had to hold the wall to keep from falling. The wallpaper's edge bit into my palm. I can't force her, he murmured. You won't have to, Clara said. We'll tell her it's for her protection. We're her family. Who else would she trust? The chair scraped softly as she stood. I'll call Dr. Hensley tomorrow. He owes my father a favor. Ciro's sigh filled the space. You make it sound simple. It is simple, she said. You just have to stop feeling guilty. The woman's sitting on more than enough to take care of us all. You think she'll ever spend it? She'll die surrounded by clean floors and locked drawers. Something in me broke then. Not anger, not even sorrow. It was the clean snap of disbelief turning into certainty. When Clara's footsteps started down the hall, I pulled back into my room and shut the door without sound. My reflection in the mirror looked strange, too. Pale eyes too sharp. I sat on the bed and pressed my hand against my chest. The pulse beneath it was frantic but steady. I had known something was wrong. I had smelled it in the air, felt it in the way Clara handled my things. But hearing it aloud, that was different. Words make evil real. Down the hall, the whispering resumed. Ciro's voice this time. She's not helpless, Clara. She's still sharp. Then make her trust you more, Clara said. We'll need her signature soon. The notary can come next week. After that, chairs' scraped footsteps faded. The door to their room closed. I waited until silence returned, the deep kind that presses on your ribs. Then I stood, crossed the room, and opened my drawer. Inside lay the small notebook I had been keeping, dates, times, the things they claimed I'd forgotten. I turned to a new page and wrote, 2 a.m. Heard Clara. Power of attorney. Doctor's note. Ciro silent. The act of writing steadied my hands. The letters came out neat, deliberate, unshaking. When I finished, I set the pen down and stared at the door. Behind it slept my son, the boy I had once protected from every danger, and now the man I needed protection from. I lay back on the bed, eyes open to the dark ceiling, and whispered to no one. Tomorrow I start preparing. Sleep never came again that night. Only resolve did. The next morning I dressed as if I were heading to Sunday Mass. Pressed blouse, pearl earrings, calm hands that trembled only when no one was watching. I waited until Ciro and Clara left for errands, then called a name I hadn't said aloud in years. Ren Aragon, I said into the receiver. It's Odessa Marin. I need advice. Quietly. He met me that afternoon at his office near the courthouse, a narrow room filled with paper and quiet confidence. Ren had once helped Hector and me buy our first property. He knew how to read fear behind politeness. What's going on, Odessa? He asked, leaning forward. I told him everything from the missing card to the whispers in the kitchen. He didn't interrupt once, only nodded slowly, tapping a pen against his pad. When I finished, he said, First, stop doubting yourself. They're setting you up for incompetence. You need protection, not confrontation. I'm not ready for a war, Ren, I said softly. You don't need a war, he replied. You need evidence. And a plan. He outlined it methodically, like folding laundry one piece at a time. Create a living trust, he said. Move all 5 laundromats under it your name. As trustee, a secondary signature with my office only. That keeps your son from touching anything, even with power of attorney. I nodded, writing as he spoke. Next, lock your accounts. Separate personal from business limit access. You can authorize me to monitor transactions in case they try again. And the house deeded into the trust as well, he said. Quietly. Don't tell them. He paused, then looked me straight in the eye. And Odessa install cameras. Hidden ones. In the kitchen living room, maybe near the office drawer, not to spy, just to confirm your memory. You'll need proof if they try to declare you unfit. The word unfit hung between us. I stared at my hands. I hate that it's come to this, I whispered. I know, he said gently, but you can't reason with people who plan lies. You outthink them. You always have. He slid a folder toward me. Sign these to start. And one more thing, keep a duplicate of your notes in a safety box. Write everything, even small things. They'll help later. When I left the office, I felt the first breath of control I'd had in weeks. That evening, while Clara arranged flowers in the hallway, I told her I was going to the laundromat for inventory. Instead, I drove to the electronics store and bought 2 small cameras and an external drive. Back home, I hid one inside the ceramic rooster above the pantry and another behind the bookshelf near my desk. Then I opened my notebook and wrote the date, time, and place for each. My pride hurt more than my fear, but pride had built my life. It could rebuild it again. When Ciro came home later, smiling and casual, I smiled back. "Long day?" I asked. He kissed my cheek. "Just planning things for you, Mom." "Good," I said, steadying my voice. "I'm planning too." That night I locked my bedroom door and slept with the notebook under my pillow. The house still breathed around me, but this time, it was my rhythm. It followed, not theirs. 3 days passed without an argument. That alone felt like peace. Ciro had been quiet, almost gentle, helping with groceries and eating breakfast beside me as if nothing had happened. Clara, too, softened her voice, complimenting my cooking, asking about Hector, as though she finally wanted to know the man who built this house. That evening, as I poured coffee, Ciro touched my arm. "Mom, he said we need to talk." His tone startled me. For a moment, I braced for another request, another manipulation. But his eyes looked tired, not cruel. "We've been unfair," he said. "I realize we came in too strong about the house, the finances. Clara was just trying to help, but it wasn't right. We overstepped." Clara nodded, her hands folded like a child awaiting forgiveness. "I'm sorry if I made you feel pushed," she said. "I only wanted to make things easier." Their remorse sounded rehearsed, but the way Ciro's voice trembled made me want to believe it. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "Let's just start over. No more talk of papers or accounts." He smiled, relieved. "Of course. You've done enough for all of us." We talked for an hour about small things, music, old neighbors, even a storm last week that knocked power out across town. The conversation flowed like it used to when he was a teenager, sitting on this same couch. For the first time in weeks, I saw traces of the boy I raised. When he kissed my forehead goodnight, I felt tears sting my eyes. "Sleep well, Mom," he whispered. That night I allowed myself to hope. I tucked away the notebook, locked the camera's recordings, and went to bed, believing the worst had passed. Morning came, bright and clean. I made breakfast and hummed while washing dishes. For a while it almost felt normal until I opened the drawer in my study. The papers inside were wrong. The trust forms Wren had drawn up were no longer stacked by date. My old property deeds lay unfolded, one with a small crease that hadn't been there before. Someone had touched them. My hand went still on the edge of the drawer. The dust around the lock looked freshly disturbed. I checked my desk, 2 pens missing, a sticky note peeled halfway off, and my notebook slightly shifted. The calm from last night cracked like thin glass. "Ciro," I called, keeping my voice steady. He appeared in the doorway, half-dressed, yawning. "Morning. Everything okay? Did you or Clara come in here last night?" He blinked. "No. Why, these papers were moved." He rubbed his eyes. "Mom, you probably forgot where you put them. You were exhausted last night." I stared at him. His tone wasn't sharp, only patient, practiced. "I see," I said. "Maybe I did forget." He smiled faintly, kissed my cheek, and poured himself coffee. "You worry too much." "Relax today." "Yeah." I nodded and watched him leave. When the door shut behind him, I opened my notebook and wrote the date again. Apology. Deeds disturbed. Still searching. Then I placed the notebook in the back of my closet instead of the desk. The false calm was gone, replaced by something colder, quieter, and far more dangerous. The morning after the apology, I stopped waiting for peace to hold. It had become clear that calm in this house was only another form of camouflage. I dressed early, called the bank, and asked for the fraud department. The young man on the line had the kind of polite voice that made deception sound impossible. "I'd like to set up a transaction hold," I said. "Any charge over 5,000 pesos needs verification from me directly, no exceptions." "Of course, ma'am," he said. "We can also flag suspicious merchants. Would you like alerts sent by text and email?" "Yes." And I added, if anyone reports my card lost or tries to order a new one, call the police first, then me. There was a pause. Understood, Mrs. Marine. I thanked him, hung up, and sat in silence. The plan had begun not out of revenge, but necessity. That afternoon, I found my gold card and placed it deliberately on my vanity table, half hidden beneath a silk scarf. The edge of the card glinted faintly under the light. From the doorway, anyone passing would notice it. I left the bedroom door ajar. When I came downstairs, Clara was wiping the counters, humming the same soft tune I'd come to hate. "Going out today?" she asked. "Tomorrow," I said. "My sister Lydia in Austin wants me to visit. She's been ill. I'll stay a few days." Clara's humming stopped. "Oh, that's sudden. She needs company." "I see." She dried her hands, her smile polite but thin. "Ciro didn't mention it." "He will," I said. "I'll tell him tonight." When Ciro returned from running errands, I mentioned the trip. "It'll be good for me," I said. "A change of air." He hesitated. "You sure you should drive alone?" "I'm taking the bus," I said. "Less trouble." Clara came in with a tray of tea. "That's a long trip for someone who tires easily." "I'll manage." Ciro reached for my shoulder. "Mom, you don't have to go. We can take care of you here." I smiled gently. "You've been doing that enough already." That night, I packed a small bag, old clothes, toiletries, and a book I hadn't opened in years. Nothing valuable. I placed it by the door where they could see it. Before bed, I went to my office and adjusted the cameras. One faced the vanity, the other the hallway leading to my study. Then I called Ren. "It's time," I said. You're sure as I've ever been." He exhaled. "Then let them hang themselves, Odessa. I'll be ready." At dawn, I carried my bag to the car, started the engine, and drove 2 blocks away before circling back on foot. The street was still asleep. From the corner, I watched my house through the branches of the pecan tree. At 9, Ciro's car pulled out. At 10, Clara stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, scanning the street. Her eyes paused on my empty driveway. Then she went back inside. Half an hour later, the text from the bank arrived. "Transaction alert, Maison de Loria, 11,000 pesos pending." My heart pounded steady as the machines that once filled my laundromats. By noon, there were 2 more notifications, one from a luxury spa, another from a jewelry store downtown. I stared at the messages, my fingers trembling, but my mind clear. The bait had worked. Back at home, the brass lamp on my porch gleamed in the sunlight, a witness waiting for what came next. I looked at the final alert and whispered to myself, "You've taken the hook, Clara." Then I dialed Ren's number. "It's happening," I said. "Start the clock." The first alert came before noon. Maison de Loria, 8,700 pesos pending. I sat alone at my kitchen table, phone in hand. Coffee untouched. The small blue light of the notification blinked again, cold and rhythmic like a heartbeat that no longer belonged to me. 10 minutes later, another message. Haven Spa, 2,000 pesos approved. Then another. Lumina Jewelry, 14,000 pesos pending. My hand didn't shake, not yet. I'd spent 40 years keeping steady under pressure, broken pipes, angry customers, payroll audits, but this was different. This wasn't business. This was blood. I called the bank immediately. "Fraud department," I said when the operator answered. "My name is Odessa Marine. The charges I'm seeing are unauthorized." "Yes, ma'am," the voice replied. "We're seeing 3 transactions today, Maison de Loria, Haven Spa, and Lumina Jewelry. Would you like to report the card stolen?" "Yes," I said. "Report it stolen by its owner." There was a brief silence on the line. "Excuse me, ma'am. You heard me," I said softly. "Flag the card, decline any further purchases, and please alert the merchants. The person using it is known to me but not authorized. Understood?" He said, his voice tightening. Would you like us to contact local law enforcement? Not yet, I said. Just security. Quietly. After the call, I stared out the window. My reflection stared back, still composed, but hollow-eyed. At 1:30, another message appeared. Attempted charge declined. I imagined Clara at the counter the way she probably laughed it off her polished tone, her hand brushing Ciro's arm, whispering something like, "She'll never know." But I did know. I watched every peso drain through that card for weeks while pretending not to notice. Every small betrayal, every missing coin of trust. The phone rang again. Mrs. Marin said the manager from Maison de Loria. "This is Esteban. Our system flagged a transaction. A woman named Clara Marin attempted to purchase luxury handbags with your card. She's still here." My pulse steadied. "Keep her there," I said. "I'm on my way." "Should we call the authorities? Not yet. Call your store security. Tell them to hold the items, not the woman. I'll handle the rest." He hesitated. "You sound calm, ma'am." "I've had practice," I said, and ended the call. When I stepped outside, the sky was bright and cruelly beautiful, like the day Hector died. I drove slowly, deliberately, letting the anger cool into something sharper. At the red light, I called Ren. "They've taken the bait," I said. "Already?" "Yes. Jewelry, handbags, spa treatments. About 24,000 pesos total." He whistled low. "Do you want me to send someone?" "No," I said. "Let them finish their performance. I'll meet them at the curtain call." As I drove toward the mall, more alerts appeared. Card declined. Transaction blocked, fraud notice active. By the time I parked, my son's betrayal had numbers attached to it. Real, countable, undeniable. Inside the car, I sat for a moment breathing. Every instinct told me to run, to pretend I hadn't seen any of it, to let love cover what dignity couldn't. But love left unchecked had already turned into blindness. I opened my notebook, the one I had filled with dates, times, and lies. I added one final entry. Maison de Loria. 1:45 p.m. Fraud confirmed. Ciro present. Then I stepped out, locking the car behind me. The mall air smelled of perfume and pretense. Somewhere ahead, under bright lights and polished glass, my son stood laughing, using the card that bore my name. I adjusted my jacket, lifted my chin, and walked toward the store. My heart was steady now, each beat deliberate. I wasn't walking to stop a thief. I was walking to meet the truth. The boutique doors opened with a chime that sounded too delicate for what I carried inside. The air was cool, perfumed with something expensive and hollow. I saw them at once, Ciro at the register laughing nervously, Clara standing beside him, her fingers tracing the handle of a handbag worth more than one of my washing machines. "Try the card again," Ciro said. His voice was light, but his jaw was tight. The cashier hesitated, glancing at the small screen that blinked red. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "It's been declined again." Clara leaned in, forcing a smile. "There must be an error." "We've used this card before," the cashier shook her head. "It's been reported stolen by its owner." The words cut through the store. A few shoppers turned. Clara froze, then turned to Ciro. "What is she talking about?" He swallowed hard, his face draining color. "That's not possible." "My mother." The manager appeared beside the counter, his expression cautious. "Is there a problem?" The cashier pointed at the screen. The system flagged it. "Stolen report confirmed by bank security at 10 this morning." "I see," the manager said slowly, then looked toward the entrance where I stood. Mrs. Marin Clara spun around. Her face went pale. "You..." Ciro's eyes widened as if he'd seen a ghost. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I walked closer, steady. My heels tapping softly against the marble. The sales clerk stepped back. Every gaze in the store followed me. "That card," I said quietly, "belongs to me." Ciro's hand was still on the counter. He tried to speak, but nothing came. Clara found her voice first. "This is humiliating," she said sharply. "You've misunderstood." "No misunderstanding," I interrupted. "I reported it stolen after my son and his wife decided my name was their wallet." The manager cleared his throat. "We'll need identification to confirm ownership." I handed him my ID. "Of course." Ciro reached toward me. "Mom, please don't," I said. My voice came out calm, almost gentle. "You've done enough talking." The manager compared the names, then nodded to the cashier. "Cancel the transaction and return the items to the floor." Clara tried to snatch the bag. "We already paid a deposit." "You didn't," I said. "The bank records everything." Security approached quietly, 2 men in dark suits. One stood near the exit, the other near the counter. Ciro's voice cracked. "Mom, I swear I didn't know she used it today. I thought you—" I looked at him, seeing not the liar, but the boy who used to wait outside the laundromat for my shift to end. His knees dusty, his smile pure. That memory ached more than anger ever could. "You knew," I said softly. "You just didn't stop her." He lowered his head. Clara's voice rose in defense. "We were just buying gifts. For you. You should be grateful." The shoppers gasped. One woman shook her head. "Grateful," I repeated. "You stole from me, lied to me, and now you call it generosity." Her lips parted, but no words came. The manager gestured discreetly to security. "Should we call the police, Mrs. Marine?" I looked at Ciro. His eyes glistened full of panic and shame. "No," I said at last. "They'll leave on their own." Clara hissed. "You'll regret this." "I already have," I said. Ciro turned to me. "Mom, please, don't do this here. This is where you did it," I said. "In public, with my name on your tongue and my card in your hand." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting could ever be. Clara stormed toward the door, heels striking the floor like a drumbeat of fury. Ciro followed, shoulders slumped, his hand brushing mine for half a second before I stepped away. When they were gone, the cashier looked at me with quiet sympathy. "Are you all right, ma'am?" I adjusted my coat and nodded. "Yes." For the first time in a long while. Outside, the sunlight hit me full in the face, bright, merciless, clean. I stood there holding my purse against my chest, feeling the weight of both loss and release. The truth had finally spoken, and it had used my voice. I waited until the sun went down before calling them into the living room. The same room that once held Christmas mornings and birthday dinners now felt like a courtroom. The air smelled faintly of polish and endings. Ciro came down first, cautious, his shirt half untucked. Clara followed, chin-high eyes flashing the kind of defiance that mistakes arrogance for courage. "What's this about?" she asked. I gestured to the coffee table. The folder sat there, thick, with printed statements, photos, and the small flash drive Wren had prepared. "Sit," I said. Ciro hesitated. "Mom, if this is about today, it is," I said. "And every day that came before it." They sat. The sound of the folder opening was louder than any word. "These are bank records," I began. "Transactions in your handwriting, Clara. And these," I slid another stack forward, "are the camera recordings from this house. You opening my drawers. You moving my documents. You whispering about my memory." Clara's face drained of color. "That's illegal, spying on us." "What you did was theft," I said quietly. "I only collected proof." Ciro rubbed his temples. "Mom, we made mistakes, but this isn't fair. We were trying to fix things, not steal." 8,700 at Maison de Loria, I said. 2,000 at Haven Spa. 14,000 at Lumina Jewelry. And a dozen smaller charges over the past month. That's not fixing anything. He looked down at his hands, fingers trembling. "I called the bank," I continued. "They confirmed everything. You used my card. You lied about a gift. You tried to make me doubt my own mind. Clara leaned forward, voice sharp. You think you're clever, but you're just bitter. You hoard money you'll never spend while your family struggles. My family, I said slowly, doesn't take what isn't theirs. Ciro reached for her wrist. Clara, stop. No, she snapped. She's playing the victim. All she cares about is control. Enough, I said, the word cutting clean through the air. You have two choices. Ciro looked up wary. What choices? First, I said, you sign a restitution agreement prepared by my lawyer. You return every peso you took in full over time, and you leave this house tonight. No police, no court. And second, Clara asked. Second, I call the police now. I give them the videos and the signed statements from the store manager and security staff. You'll spend the night explaining fraud to someone less patient than I am. For a long moment, no one moved. The ticking clock sounded like a metronome keeping pace with my heartbeat. Clara laughed, a brittle, unbelieving sound. You wouldn't call the police on your own son. I looked at Ciro. Try me. He stood slowly, face pale. Mom, please. She didn't mean she did, I said. But this isn't about her anymore. It's about you. He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw the boy inside. The man lost, ashamed, desperate to undo something irreversible. I'll sign, he whispered. Clara turned on him. You can't be serious. He didn't look at her. I am. I handed him the pen. He stared at it for a long time before writing his name across the bottom of the page, his signature shaky but legible. When he finished, he placed the pen down carefully, like it might burn him. Will you ever forgive me? He asked. I took the signed papers and slid them back into the folder. Forgiveness isn't a switch, Ciro. It's a gate. And you locked it yourself. Tears welled in his eyes, but I didn't move to comfort him. Love without respect had already cost too much. Clara stood abruptly. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. I met her gaze. I already was. She grabbed her purse, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out. Ciro stayed frozen for a moment, then followed her to the door. He paused on the threshold, looking back at me as if waiting for a word, any word that might soften what had just happened. But I had none left to give. When the door finally closed, the house exhaled. I stood there, folder in hand, surrounded by the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint echo of the sun I used to know. Outside, I heard the car engine start. It faded down the street until there was nothing but silence. I walked to the window, set the folder on the sill, and whispered to the empty air. I warned you not to mistake my love for weakness. Then I turned off the light. The locksmith arrived early the next morning. A quiet man, polite and efficient. He didn't ask why I wanted every lock in the house changed front back, even the old door to the basement that no one used. He simply nodded when I handed him coffee and got to work. When he left, the sound of the van driving away lingered longer than it should have. The new keys were heavy in my hand, their metal scent sharp, unfamiliar. For the first time in months, every door in my house answered only to me. I walked from room to room, restoring what had been quietly undone. The rug back to its center, the photos to the mantel, Hector's lamp to its rightful corner. The furniture seemed to sigh as I moved it like a body, finally stretching after being held too long. In the kitchen, I cleared Clara's labeled jars, the ones that had turned my shelves into a showroom. I poured the contents into plain glass containers, simple, practical mine. The small defiance steadied me. By noon, the house had stopped feeling like a stage and started feeling like a home again, though the silence inside it was thick, almost tender. I found their leftover mugs in the sink, the imprint of Clara's lipstick faint on one rim. I scrubbed it clean and placed it upside down to dry. Then I noticed an envelope near the fruit bowl. My name written in Ciro's handwriting round, careful the same as when he was 10, and learning to sign permission slips. My fingers hesitated on the flap, before I opened it. Mom, I don't know how to fix what I did. I don't even know how to explain it. I let someone speak for me when I should have spoken for myself. I saw what she wanted, and I convinced myself it was love. But I know now what real love costs because I just lost yours. Someday I'll prove I can be your son again. Ciro, no excuses, no requests, just a confession written in the space between shame and hope. I folded it carefully and sat at the table, staring at the empty chair across from me. For a long time, I couldn't tell if the ache in my chest was grief or relief. Maybe both. That night, I made dinner for 1 rice beans, a small piece of fish, and ate slowly the way Hector used to when he wanted to stretch a quiet evening. The clock ticked steady on the wall. Outside, the wind moved through the pecan trees, brushing against the windows, like an old friend checking in. I washed my plate, wiped the counter, and turned off the lights, room by room. When I reached the study, I opened the drawer where I kept the folder of evidence, the receipts, statements, signatures, all the proof of betrayal that had kept me standing. Next to it, I placed Ciro's letter. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to remember how close love and damage can live beside each other. The night deepened around me, wrapping the house in stillness. I walked to the front door, tested the new lock, and turned the key. The click echoed through the empty rooms. For a moment, I leaned my forehead against the wood, breathing in the quiet. The walls no longer listened for footsteps that weren't mine. When I went to bed, I left the hallway lamp on the same one that had always guided Ciro home as a child. Its soft light pooled across the floor, tracing the path from his old room to mine. I didn't turn it off. Sleep came slowly, gentle but watchful. And when it did, I dreamed not of confrontation or anger, but of still water, unmoving, clear. Finally, mine to see my own reflection in again. The idea began quietly, like most salvations do. A conversation over lukewarm coffee in Wren's office. "You don't have to keep fighting alone," he said. "What happened to you is happening to others. They just don't have your proof or your nerve." I smiled faintly. "You're saying I should turn my humiliation into a public service?" "I'm saying you should turn it into a shield," he replied, "for people who still think it's their fault." That sentence stayed with me. 2 weeks later, I was sitting across from him again this time, with a folder full of notes and a list of names. "I want to open a small center," I said. "A place where seniors can come before they lose everything. Advice referrals, someone who listens." Wren leaned back, studying me. "You're serious?" "I've spent months drowning in silence," I said. "If I don't use what I learned, then all of it, every wound, was for nothing." He smiled. "Then let's call it something that sounds like strength, not pity." I thought for a moment, then said silver dignity. He nodded. "Perfect." Within 6 months, the name was painted on a modest sign above a refurbished corner office near downtown San Antonio. I rented the space with funds from one laundromat I sold. It felt right to trade cycles of cleaning clothes for cycles of cleaning fear. Wren handled the legal setup. I handled the people. On our first day, only one visitor came, a woman named Doris, trembling, as she handed me a crumpled check her nephew had forged. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered. "He said it was for rent." I held her hand. "You don't need to justify trusting him. That's what love does. It assumes decency." Tears welled in her eyes. "Can I get my money back?" "Maybe not all of it," I said gently, "but you can get yourself back." That night I went home and sat by Hector's old lamp. I wrote in my notebook, "Every story begins with shame. My job is to rewrite the ending." Word spread faster than I expected. Within a few months, Silver Dignity had volunteers, retired lawyers, a few young paralegals, even a social worker who used to fold towels in one of my laundromats. They came because they'd seen their parents or themselves in the faces that walked through our door. By the end of the year, we'd counseled over 100 elders. Some arrived angry, some hollow, some shaking with guilt. All of them left knowing they weren't alone. One afternoon, a journalist came by. She was young, sharp, curious. "Why start this at your age?" she asked, recording my answer. I thought about it. "Because age is where people stop listening," I said. "And that's exactly where we need to speak the loudest." Her article went online the following week. Widow turns betrayal into battle plan for the elderly. The photo showed me standing in front of the sign, wind tugging at my hair. For the first time, I didn't mind being seen. Soon donations began arriving, nothing extravagant, small checks, handwritten notes, a box of office supplies from a woman in Corpus Christi who wrote, "My brother drained my savings." "I wish I'd found you sooner." Ren teased me when we bought the second file cabinet. "You've started a revolution," he said. "Just laundry of a different kind," I told him. Sorting out stains that never should have been there. Sometimes when I locked up in the evenings, I thought about Ciro. Whether he'd found work, whether Clara had left him, whether he was still trying to prove something to the world or to me. I never called, but I didn't hate him anymore. One night as I was turning off the lights, Doris returned. She carried a bouquet of sunflowers wrapped in newspaper. "You helped me," she said. "I wanted to say thank you." I smiled. "How's your nephew?" "In therapy," she said. "And I'm learning to use online banking." We laughed softly. She set the flowers on my desk and added, "You saved more than money here, you know." After she left, I looked around the small office, its mismatched chairs, its humming old printer, the sign taped crookedly to the wall, and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace that didn't feel borrowed. Later at home, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The wind carried the sound of distant traffic and faintly church bells. I thought about the walls I'd built around my life, the locks, the trust documents, the careful routines. They hadn't kept love out. They'd kept it clean, preserved. We built walls not to keep love out, I realized, but to protect it from rot. I watched the porch light glow against the dark and whispered to myself, "Silver dignity. That's what we all deserve." Then I went inside, closed the door behind me, and turned the key with a steady hand. It was almost a year before I saw him again. The afternoon light fell through the blinds like thin threads of gold, catching on the framed article about silver dignity that hung near my door. I was sorting donation receipts when the knock came soft, hesitant, familiar. I opened the door, and there he was. Ciro stood on the porch, thinner than I remembered, his hair shorter, his hands stained faintly with grease. The shirt he wore had a small patch that read, "Delgado Auto Repair." He looked older, not just in face, but in spirit. "Hi, Mom." His voice was quiet, careful. I studied him for a moment. The last image I had of him was walking away from this same porch with shame on his back. Now he stood as though asking permission to breathe. "I heard about your center," he said. "Silver dignity. You're helping people." "I'm trying," I said. He nodded, shifting his weight. "I wanted to come sooner, but I didn't know if I should." "You shouldn't have, then," I replied softly. "But you're here now," he exhaled. "I'm clean, Mom. No debt, no lies. Been working steady for 6 months. My boss says I've got a good hand for detail. I'm glad to hear that." He looked at the floor. "I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wondered if maybe when you're ready, I could stop by sometimes. Saturdays, maybe? Bring groceries, check the porch light. Nothing more." The porch light, he remembered. Behind him, the sky was turning to late afternoon orange, the same color as the brass lamp I'd been meaning to replace. The old one had dimmed last winter, flickering like a memory that refused to die. "I think that would be all right," I said after a moment. "Saturday mornings. 1 hour. You'll call first." He nodded quickly, relief softening his face. "Thank you." We stood there for a long time, neither of us knowing how to fill the quiet. He finally reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I brought something," he said. "It's nothing big." Inside was a folded paper and invoice. "Brass porch lamp installation. Paid in full." "I saw one at the shop we use for replacements," he said. It reminded me of the one Dad hung when I was little. "You didn't have to, I wanted to." His eyes met mine. Not as payment, just something right for once. The truth of it landed heavy and clean between us. That weekend, a young electrician came and replaced the old lamp with a new brass one, simple but strong. When the sun fell, it glowed steady across the porch, casting soft light onto the steps where Hector once sat, polishing his tools, and where my son now stood each Saturday at 9, holding coffee and quiet apology. We spoke of ordinary things, work, weather, my garden. He never stayed long, never lingered. It was better that way. One morning as he was leaving, he paused by the lamp. "You had something engraved," he said, running his thumb across the base. "Yes," I said, "built by boundaries, kept by respect." He read it again under his breath. "It suits you." "It suits us," I corrected gently. He smiled, then a small, tired smile, but honest. "See you next week, Mom." After he left, I stood by the doorway, watching the lamp's light settle over the porch. It didn't burn harsh or bright. It just held steady, the way peace does when it finally stops apologizing for existing. Inside, the phone rang Ren, asking about new grant paperwork. I told him I'd handle it Monday. Tonight I wanted quiet. I poured tea, sat by the window, and looked out at the glow washing over the steps. For years, I thought safety came from keeping everything locked away. Money, memories, even love. But boundaries hadn't closed my life. They'd rebuilt it. I whispered into the stillness. I didn't just protect my money. I saved my voice. The wind brushed against the house, soft as breath. The new brass lamp flickered once, then steadied, holding its promise through the night. When forgiveness finally knocks, I thought, maybe you don't open the door. Maybe you turn on the light and let it find its own way in.